Metalheads, and welcome to a special episode of the Harsh Vocals Podcast. I'm joined by my good friend Christian Renner, as usual, and then we have a special guest, Carl Skildum, from multiple bands, including Majesties, Inexorum, and the new band, Skjolden. We're very excited to have you on, Carl.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So we've been fans of your work for quite a while. We discovered Inexorum back in 2020 when Moonlight Navigation came out. Love that album. Even more so, I love Equinox Vigil. It's been something that's been on repeat for me pretty much since it dropped. It was in my top 10 albums the year it came out. And then I didn't even realize that you were the same person behind Majesties, but I loved that album too. It made my top 30 for 2023. So I got to say thank you for putting out so much great music.
Thank you. Wow, that's awesome. I mean, it never gets old to hear that this music matters to anyone. So, I mean, thank you. That's great.
Well, as you know or may not know, Christian made an error purchasing vinyls from you.
Yeah.
And so we decided to do a giveaway on the show. And, we figured since we're doing the giveaway, we might as well see if we can get an interview too. And congratulations goes out to Brent Bailey on Instagram. He was our winner of the giveaway. So his vinyls are on the way. So congrats, Brent. And thank you to everybody who entered and told us what their favorite albums were so far of the year. We actually discovered a few bands that we had not yet heard. So, we listen to almost everything that comes out, but stuff slips through the cracks. You know how it is.
There's so much good music out there. And, you got somebody here that's in 4 bands. So there you go. Kicking out killer music. And so I guess we'll just go ahead and jump right in this. Is it Inexorum or is it... Am I saying it wrong the whole time?
When I first started saying it, that's how I said it, Inexorum. And then I've heard other people say Inexorum, and that started to roll off my tongue a little bit more. I mean, it's a made-up word. It's sort of, bastardized Latin. Obviously the root is inexorable, and then I just made it sound, nerdy and Latin. So either way, I think is fine. But you'll probably hear me say it more often, Inexorum instead of Inexorum. So that's that seems to roll off my tongue a little bit more. But There's no right or wrong.
All right. Well, I'll just go with Inexorum. So my first question is, Inexorum began as a solo project to explore the melodic black metal. This is what I saw in a couple of interviews that you've done. Mm-hmm. How's your approach to songwriting evolved since Lore of the Lakes?
Well, it kind of has been the same all through those 3 albums in that, it did start, the idea was going to be it was a solo project. And I quickly realized when it became apparent that I had to actually let other people hear it, because I thought this is just going to be something my friends are going to check out. I didn't expect it to be ever released in any format. I thought, I'm making a demo for my buddies. So when it turned out that I was talking with Adam Artlett from Gilead Media about doing the record with him, I realized I have to have help with this because I did not understand the basics of mixing and how to make it sound right. And so I brought in my friend Matt Kirkwald. So Matt really has been a part of the band since the beginning, from when it matters. But the writing approach has always been me writing at home and getting all the guitars together and then sending it over to Matt for him to finish up. So that's been consistent since day one. And it really, I think, has been fun for me because it's so fast to work that way. I mean, I would have never expected to knock out 3 albums in 6 years, and I could have probably done twice that, but that would have been ridiculous. So, but it just is a really easy workflow for me to be able to just say, I'm gonna write these guitars, get them good, and the first time I play them right, that's what's going on the record. So it's like farm to table riffs almost. There's no sitting on them for 6 months. I record them and they're there. So it's pretty cool.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So with Inexorum, you focus more on the melodic black metal, and with Majesties, you kind of dipped into more of a melodic death metal kind of realm. Your new projects, Skjolden, I gotta make sure I say that right. I listened to the first track today since you put it out on YouTube and Bandcamp, and it's kind of a hybrid of the two in my mind, but I think it does maybe lean a little bit more towards like more atmospheric black metal. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project and how you're differentiating it from the previous ones?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the fact that this one is the first time I've ever mixed and mastered, and a lot of that comes from the learning curve over the last few years of kind of just trying to understand, how do you actually make a record? That's different, but I tried to do a couple other things. A big difference from Inexorum to Skjolden is that Inexorum's ton of guitar leads and solos, and there really aren't that many of those on the Skjolden album. In fact, it's mostly where I would do that stuff. I'm putting in keyboards instead, so it's kind of me changing up a few instruments. And now I will say there's still a ton of guitars on this record. It's still 4 rhythm guitars, separate tracks of rhythm, which is just ridiculous, but I like to do things that way. But it's really more about the rhythm guitars and lead guitars. And then I did take a different vocal approach too, a little bit of a darker, kind of less of a yell and more of a rasp. So I don't know if it's apparent, but those are the two things in my mind that were different to make sure that it wasn't the exact same thing, just me by myself. So hopefully that'll come across in the overall album, that, there's enough of a different personality that it warrants a different name.
All right. Is that going to see a vinyl release?
Yeah, right now, I just thought, I'm just doing this as a lark. And I don't have plans to put it out on vinyl myself. I'm, in a way, just testing the waters with releasing music on my own. It's been a while since I've done that. I've been fortunate to have all my other stuff recently come out with the help of a label who, and a formal PR campaign. And so I'm trying to replicate that in a very small fashion here, but, really this is more of a small scale thing. And I guess I would say if somebody ends up wanting to talk about that down the road, and I'm certainly open to it, but I'm not planning to fund that myself right now. I'm not in a position to fund a label pressing or anything like that. So,
all right. You just talked about layering the amount of guitar tracks that, and you do that, I'm assuming, to get that orchestral effect. How do you avoid clutter in the mix, and what challenges arise when translating this in a live setting? Have you tried to play these live with that layer?
Yeah, Inexorum, we thought about doing a live show, and there was it kind of got close right before COVID knocked things off. But the closest thing has probably been the obsequii shows that we've done over the years. We ended up having to get 3 guitar players on stage, and even then, there were some parts of the album that were not replicated live. So I think for something like Skjolden, where it's 4 rhythm guitars, I'm going at it with the approach that these songs I'm probably not going to play live. I'm going to scratch the live itch with some of the other stuff. Majesties, for example, we are playing our live debut this summer at Fire in the Mountains, and hopefully that's not the only thing that we'll do, but that's the only thing that's been announced right now. And that's pretty similar. Majesties sometimes has 4 or 5 guitars going at once, and so we're gonna pick and choose what makes the most sense. What are the kind of the hero moments? If it's leads that are harmonized, those will probably get prioritized. The bass will cover some of the chords, so we'll figure it out and make sure that it's not going to feel like it's missing anything in terms of energy. But I don't know. I don't know how I would do some of the Skjolden or some of the Inexorum stuff live without 3 or 4 guitar players on stage, and that's just impractical. So,
have to clone yourself.
Yeah.
Well, here's an idea. What you do is you tour with Amiensis, and you have some of them chip in.
I love those guys.
There's like 9 guys in that band too. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's actually Jim's birthday, so happy birthday, Jim.
Oh, happy birthday indeed.
I noticed that nature and Minnesota's landscapes are central to Inexorum's themes. How do you translate these environments into music, particularly in albums like Equinox Vigil? I noticed you really focused on that album.
Yeah, when I started thinking about the lyrics for that album, that was definitely the pandemic written album, where it was really, stuck at home, not knowing what was going on. And my wife and I really, the only way we could get out of the house was to go out on hikes or to go, get out in nature. So some of that record was actually written at a cabin nearby, actually in South Dakota, where my wife's family is from. But, just being out in nature really inspired me and kind of got me thinking about, things like, the impermanence of my life, that this time period that we're living in, how it seems like it's so intense, and, to nature, it's just like, a blip. And so that actually made me feel a little bit better, especially during that time, is that, it was sort of the whole concept of this will pass, and, the world is going to still be here, and this beauty is still going to be here. And that I really felt like I latched on to, especially during that time. So I think that's where my head was at when I was writing those lyrics. And certainly a lot of those songs were written like in the middle of the woods. So that helped fit the vibe too.
In true black metal fashion.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's super cliche, but it meant a lot to me to be able to think that way and have to be able to connect these songs with that time and that environment.
No, it's very cool. And it does come through, especially in the lyrics, that sense of hopefulness kind of in your music, at least on that album. And I really appreciated that, because I was, it's one of those albums that I'd return to often when I'm going through a hard time. And it's a good album for like pulling myself out of that depressing sort of feeling that I'm having. So it's really good for that.
Oh man, that's awesome to hear. I mean, that's always my hope with this stuff. I know, it's probably not the most true or cult thing to say, but my approach, I mean, I do think of it as black metal in the way that there's always an element, because I've wrestled with spirituality and I grew up Lutheran, and I, over the years, realized that wasn't right for me. And I've struggled with that always. So there's an element in all of these records where I think it is legitimately black metal, because I'm wrestling with and kind of grading against some of what I've been brought up with. But it's a small element. A bigger element to me is, how do you get through this? How do you get through life in a way that's, that is harmonious? And so how do you manage to squeeze that into the framework of black metal? I'm still wrestling with it and trying to find a balance between, I don't want to be cheesy or corny, but I don't want to have just a negativity bomb thrown at people either. We get enough of that.
That's something we say all the time, is black metal seems to be the most malleable subgenre of music, because you can add hopefulness to it. You can tell different kinds of stories. It doesn't have to just be Satan and hate. It can be, beauty and perseverance as well. So it's really cool that you are approaching it with kind of a different mindset and still trying to make it fit within that genre. I love it, at least.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I certainly do as well. I mean, we have Wayfarer that mixes, country with black metal. We got Vorga, who's all space themed and stuff, and everything that they do works really well. The new Labyrinthus Stellarum just came out today, and it's a fantastic album. Black metal is so damn good over the last 15, 20 years. It's just gotten better and better.
Well, it's just because people are more experimental, and the more experimental you get, the more amazing projects are just being generated. I mean, there's still really good classic black metal being made, but I love seeing all these other projects like Inexorum that are, doing something different. And it makes you stand out too. I mean, there are other bands that do similar things, atmospheric kind of sounds, but they're not necessarily hopeful sounding in the way that yours does in some places. So I like the diversity in that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because when I first, I've also been listening to metal since the Stone Age, and I remember when I first heard black metal, some of the second wave stuff. I mean, I really kind of discovered it during first wave when it was not really called black metal. I mean, Venom and Celtic Frost and even Merciful Fate, they all kind of get lumped under first wave, and that's the stuff I heard as a high schooler. So I'm like, yeah, this stuff is all cool. It just was metal to me. And then the second wave stuff, I was deep into death metal, and coming from thrash metal. So, to me, death metal was the even better version of thrash metal. And then I heard this kind of the first early black metal or second wave stuff, and it didn't connect with me right away. It felt like, this sounds like shit. The production's terrible. They don't sound heavy. And it took me a while to figure it out. And honestly, the one that made it click of that second wave stuff was Ulver, and specifically Naughton's Madrigal, which, that record sounds like hell, but I enjoyed picking out, I had to set my expectations differently, but picking out the melody from this, basically it's a shaken jar of bees. To pick that out was so cool, and that's how I started to get it. I'm like, it's not about sounding perfect, but it's about partially it's about just sounding real and having that emotional element, which is really weird when I think about it, because for a long time, metal felt like it wasn't emotional. It was more about,
except for anger.
Let's just crush. And I was fine with that. But now to have that extra element in there, it kind of opened things up for me in a different way that I wasn't expecting. And I've really grown to appreciate it. And like you said, there's so many cool different ways you can approach it. It doesn't all have to just be reverent to what did these three bands do 25, 35 years ago? Yeah. So, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's definitely a place for that, but I don't think that it has to be that way these days. And we talk all the time about how it's a progression with metal. Like you enter with gateway level bands, thrash stuff, easy to digest, and then you develop your ear a little bit, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, until you're able to appreciate the more extreme things. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't imagine what it was like growing up in the time when black metal was really getting termed black metal, and those second wave bands were first appearing, and trying to understand what they were trying to accomplish. Like, I'm a little bit younger. I'm 42, so that was just slightly before my time. But it had to be cool growing up and being exposed to that stuff for the first time at the same time everybody else was.
Yeah, it was fun, but it took me a while. I mean, there was a thing. I mean, people were either I'm black metal or I'm death metal. And I was definitely team death metal for a bit when that stuff first started to make its way over. But the other piece, I mentioned Oliver, but it started to click for me when some of the, and I always feel like, and this kind of bleeds into Majesties a little bit, but I've said this before, when we first heard some of those early melodic death metal classics, they had vocals that I really associated more with that higher rasp of black metal, and that started to help me click that it didn't have to be a low guttural, it could be this high rasp, and then just the floodgates open, and I finally started to get it, and bands that didn't make sense to me before suddenly became just like magic. So that, but like you said, it just takes a floodgate to be opened, and then the horizons expand.
See, and I think it's like I have the exact same journey as you did, because I'm 56, so I'm a little bit older than you. But like when you're talking, in the 80s with Celtic Frost and Venom, and to be honest with you, I thought those bands were shit. I just did not like them at all. I thought they were fucking terrible. And, I was of the opinion at the time that, the only reason you would do harsh vocals is because you can't fucking sing. Mm-hmm. So, and, but then I heard Chuck Schuldiner, and I was like, well, I could be wrong. And then I super got into death metal, and thrash became my thing. And, it just kept going. And then I was able to get, a little bit harsher vocals, and that was okay. Slayer, a little bit okay. Not really harsh, but Chuck got me kind of over that hump. And for me, where it really clicked for black metal was later in the 90s with Immortal. And it's probably because they're so steeped in thrash metal to begin with. A lot those are just straight up thrash metal riffs. So it was easy, and from there, like you were saying, it's just straight up floodgates. Now I'm at the point where clean vocals sound weird. Like you really got to do clean vocals really well. And I used to be able to overlook it before, and now I can't. You have to have fantastic clean vocals. If you're going to do clean vocals, you damn well better crush it. Because, for the most part, I think that metal currently is better now than it has ever been. The level of talent out there is just insane. And I'm sure part of that is because you don't necessarily need a record deal to get your music out there. So you're going to have a whole lot more stuff out there. Me and Justin listen to 80 to 100 albums every single week for the Harsh Vocals podcast, and we come across stuff all the time that's completely new to us. And these guys probably recorded this in their living room. So
there's way less of a barrier to entry than there used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's part of the reason why I think, doing this stuff now, because I remember how frustrating it was as a young guitar player wanting to, record my music and get it, I wasn't so worried about getting it out so other people could hear it, but I at least wanted to get it so that it matched what I heard in my head. And it was so hard in the olden days. You had to get it into a studio and you come up with the cash to do it. And, there's still some of that today. I mean, the bands that I'm in with drummers, we still record in studios, and it's still a matter of getting in there and going through the session. But for me, it's just revelatory to be able to record guitars at home and vocals at home, and to know enough now about how to do it right so that it sounds the way it should. So I feel like I'm playing catch up to my teenage dreams in a way.
That's awesome.
Are there any collaborators in Skjolden, or is it a return to your solo work?
This is really, truly the true first solo project I've ever done. I mean, nobody heard it. Even my good friends, my other bandmates, I didn't share it until the whole thing was done, because I just wanted to see, am I doing it right? and the first people who heard it were the other guys in Majesties. I shared it with them, and they said, "Yeah, keep going. You're on the right track and not screwing up too badly." So that was good, and I think that gave me the confidence to finish it up and put it out there myself. But I've never done that before. Everything else I've ever released has been with at least one other collaborator. So this was a first for me.
So I know you're a multi-instrumentalist, but did you do all the music on real instruments, or is any of it like drum machines, or is it programmed?
Yeah. I did the vocals, bass, and guitars myself, and then the drums are, so, you can buy basically session drum performances from professional drummers. So they get paid, and then you can edit them. And that's what I've done. So I've got people, some names you probably would know. They performed these drum patterns on an E-kit. So it is a human drummer on an E-kit, and then just those are all converted into MIDI notes, and then I can move those around. I fit them to what I need the song to be. But in terms of I need a blast beat here, I'm not going to just tap on a keyboard, because that's where I think people, and myself included, have had a negative feeling about programmed drums, is that we've all heard those demos where it sounds like just
yeah,
and it doesn't sound real. And the big reason for that is because it's all robotic, and it sounds like electronic music. It sounds like dance music, and that doesn't feel natural for metal, which has a little bit of an ebb and flow. And so that's what I'm hoping to retain out of having like a human session drummer on a E-kit, because it has that variation in beats. It's got the change in velocity, which is kind of the loudness of the hits. It varies. So it sounds real, like a human performance, because it was originally performed by a human.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I listened to the first track on the new album, or the first track you released, and it didn't sound like a drum machine. So I just wanted to verify.
Yeah, I don't have a kit set up at home. If I sat down behind the drums, it'd be like, passable, but not like what I'd want to record. So this is the way for me to do that. And I still have to work to edit the stuff to make it fit the riffs.
Right.
It's usually it's not just dropping things in and letting them go. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Speaking as a drummer, there's nothing I dislike more than programmed drums. But
yeah, I get it.
Being a drummer, I get it. I mean, you wouldn't program a guitar, so.
Yep. Although I have to say, I've heard a friend of mine's got a project where everything in the project is VST instruments, including the guitars. There's no vocals, but when I first heard it, I would have been hard pressed to tell you that these weren't just 3 or 4 stellar musicians all in one room playing. So the technology is pretty wild in what you can do, and so I'm not opposed to whatever tools someone uses to get their ideas across. But yeah, I get it. I mean, I think back to some of those earlier drum machine records, like, if you remember King Diamond's The Eye, how frustrated everyone was, like, this sounds weird. And, that's an 80s drum machine, and we've only heard umpteen different variations of that over the years. So I'm very sensitive to it. I don't want to be like, here's another shitty sounding basement black metal record with Casio drums. That's not what I want to have it sound like. So anyway, hopefully I didn't mess up too badly with that approach.
The first single sounds amazing, so definitely not.
When's the official release date for this?
June 20.
June 20th. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Well, Skjolden's sound draw from the same influences as Inexorum? You know, your new wave of British heavy metal, Swedish metal. Are you exploring new territories, or is it going to be kind of in the same thing? And you said you're just going to add more keyboards rather than guitars on this one?
Yeah, I think Skjolden can be anything. I mean, obviously this first record is very much in the melodic black metal vein, but I like the idea of having an imprint to put out whatever I want. So it's not necessarily going to be I'm going to be throwing the kitchen sink at people. It'll as I do more with this, it'll make sense conceptually, but there may be something where I'll do some more acoustic based music. There may be something that takes on a slightly different vibe. Maybe there's more doom elements to it. This is something that I'm interested in, haven't explored that much. So this can be many things. I think for this first one, I've been enjoying a lot of like Finnish black metal, especially. It has this weird kind of a rock and roll element to it that I connect with. Obviously trying to avoid the stuff that's sketchy. So but I do feel like that might have been in my headspace a little bit with some of these riffs that made it onto this record.
Yeah, we're huge fans of the same rock and roll based black metal. And it's kind of branched out from Finland too. I mean, there's a lot of American bands that are really exploring that these days, and some of them are just incredible.
Yeah.
Speaking of, the music that you like, who would you say are your biggest influences? Like, who do you think is the most responsible for your musical direction in your creation?
Oh boy, I'm hard pressed to just nail down like in specifics. I think in terms of keyboards, I want to say some of the stuff that I've heard out of Quebec scene, bands that are, I'm trying to think of some names. I know Delatir is one that I like the way those keyboards are integrated. And that was what sort of got me thinking about, hey, I want to try some of this, distorted organ. That's always been a sound that I really like and wanted to dabble in. So that was really sort of the first thing that connected with me as I was starting to write this record, is that, I want to have this kind of sort of like a demented church sounding thing. There's a lot of kind of church organ sounds with a little bit of distortion and kind of some haunting elements that spoke to me and made the concept clear and how I was differentiating between anything I'd done before in this new record. So, yeah, I guess, some of the Quebec stuff. I love Havakrunu. I don't know that they've got a lot of like the haunted cathedral keyboards that I was trying to use on this.
They got a lot of folksy sound though.
Yeah, I don't think that I really had too much of that on this record. I mean, I feel like I dabbled in some of that in Inexorum. So this was, meant to be more of a direct in your face kind of thing. And the keyboards sort of, and they get pretty in your face as well, almost like the guitars do.
All right. You've said that metal was a refuge for you in hard times. How do you hope your music impacts listeners facing their own struggles?
Well, I was. I mean, I think when I was growing up and trying to figure out who I was and going through the standard hardships of that process, that, metal always gave me a little bit of a sense of strength, and that, hey, this stuff happens, but, I can handle it and I'm going to work through it. And that's what I hope that, if I'm very lucky that, someone might take that away from my music, that's about the best I could ever ask for. And it's, it's not necessarily that I'm trying to be just, a raw, everything is fine, because I don't think everything is fine. It's more about, how do you keep your head up and maintain the core of who you are in the face of, things that are constantly changing and information coming at you that's probably faster than our brains are evolved to accept. I mean, it's quite a time we live in right now. So I think that to have this music provide an escape and maybe just a sense of, that breath in and reinvigoration that I feel when I hear it, if I ever can do that for someone else, that's a win in my book.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, me and Justin definitely feel that.
Yeah, we're huge on emotionally impactful music. I mean, we listen to 3,000, 4,000 new albums every single year, looking for those perfect emotionally driven albums that resonate with us. And I mean, if we're lucky, we'll find one or two a year. Sometimes we find more. Last year was crazy, but I get that from Inexorum, and I'm really excited to hear more of Skjolden so I can see if I get that from Skjolden too. It's kind of hard to gauge on one track, but I'm looking forward to the whole album for sure.
I'll get it to you.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, I've kind of noticed that metalheads, for the most part, are a little bit more introspective than most music fans. Like what we were talking about earlier with like gateway bands or whatever. Nobody ever, Mayhem is their first metal band. That's just not going to happen. So you have to kind of build up to it. And I think it is a journey, I guess. You start out here, but where you end up may be completely different. Like I still have tons of love for Iron Maiden and, and Judas Priest, everything that got me into it. Now, I don't think those bands are really pushing the envelope of what they used to do. So where my focus has been lately is just, all the black and death metal that's come out that's just so damn good. And, they're just taking it that step further, and you can definitely find tons of stuff to appreciate there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this is, and really for about the past 15 years, to me especially, has felt like metal as a whole is just, there's way more coming out than I can keep track of that I like. Not even withstanding just the volume of stuff that gets released in total, but the stuff that feels like it was meant for me. There's more than I can hear in my free time. So it is wild. And coming from when I first got into this stuff, where maybe once a month something cool would come out, one or two records that I really wanted to hear would come out. I mean that it was a big deal. And now every Friday I'm checking K-Man riffs. I don't know if who you keep track of for new releases, but
K-Man's one of my resources for sure.
Yeah, I just like that's every Friday morning. What's K-Man got that's coming out? And I'm 5 or 6 things there every Friday. I'm listening to them as they come out, and then throughout the rest of the week. And I still can't keep up. I don't know how you guys do it.
We're addicts. I think that's we're gluttons for punishment too, because there's more bad than good still. If you hear 60 albums in a week, it's a good bet that 45 of them are not going to be awesome. But sometimes that proves us wrong. Sometimes there are weeks where it's like more than half are just incredible, and then it becomes a real challenge because you have to devote enough time to each one to really evaluate them and talk about them, especially with this platform we have, because we want to make sure we're highlighting the most deserving music too. We really take it seriously.
Do you feel like you get a chance to listen to albums more than once when they connect to you? Or do you feel like, I love this record, but now I got to listen to these 20 other things to stay on top of it?
We have Christian and I listen to music all week long. We start listening Thursday night when stuff drops. We don't usually sleep until 3 or 4 in the morning on Friday. I work from home. Christian works in a factory, but he can listen to music the whole time he's working. So both of us work and listen to music while we're working. And so we make playlists of all the stuff we enjoy, and then we revisit those as much as possible throughout. And for most albums, even if they're complex, it's not really a problem. I can still hear an album that I like 20 times in a week. For some albums, though, like I'm sure you're familiar with Toma Room from the US. They released their most recent one, Beyond Obsidian Euphoria. It's one of the most challenging albums I've heard ever. It's very dense, and we could not give that album enough listens to crack it before we had to review it and talk to them about it. By this point, I've heard it probably 60 or 70 times, and I feel like I understand it a lot better now. But it's really difficult to spend that much time with an album in a short amount of time. So sometimes if it's too challenging, it takes longer to get there. But for most stuff, we can do it in a week, but not everybody else can. And we like being the source to help all our friends discover the great new music that's coming out, because we know a lot of other podcasters and YouTubers, and we are the filter for finding the good new stuff. And we love talking to bands too, because we like helping bands find an audience, and we like helping an audience find bands. So it's really something we're both very passionate about.
Oh, that's awesome.
And don't ever ask me about this new hot TV show, because I've never seen it. I just listen to music all the time. I rarely ever watch TV, so that's probably part of it too. So most of my focus is always music, and it is a true passion. I've loved this music since hell, the very first album that I bought with my own money was AC/DC Back in Black with their new singer, and so you started there, and it's been ever since. I still remember my mom saying at that time that it was a phase that I was going through. So this phase has lasted quite a long time. Speaking of age, from your age, your career at this point spans decades. What's the most valuable lesson you think you've learned about sustaining creativity through the massive changes that have happened in the world, in the music industry? Like things have changed dramatically from the 1980s to what they are now in the music industry. It's not even the same thing anymore.
The business is absolutely more of a challenge and in many ways, but as I mentioned earlier, that the thing that is a lot easier and is driving so many of these records is that the access to the tools to make music has completely flipped. I mean, you could record a record on your iPhone if you really wanted to. I mean, it's kind of wild and it has its own pros and cons. To your point, some of the stuff that's coming out maybe is a little half baked. I never really dunk on anything that comes out. If it's not for me, it's that's fine, but it might be for someone else. But
that's our approach too. We try not to be negative about anything.
Yeah,
if we don't like it, we just don't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think almost it's if their creator felt it was worth putting out there and it connects with somebody, that's all that really matters. My taste is specific in certain ways too. So there's certain things that people do that I'm like, I don't vibe with that, but that's cool. I don't know. I think it's really interesting that the one thing I learned from being in bands and and kind of my upbringing playing music in a room with people, and the only way you could remember it was to have a cassette boombox to record it, is that you have to be able to capture it somehow and to be able to sit with the music a little bit before you go back and commit it to tape or to hard drive. That always felt like I needed that. I needed that, time to sit with it, hear it, instead of thinking about what am I doing mechanically to perform it, so that I could feel like that emotional connection with it. I don't know if that makes sense, but as a guitar player, there's the element of what am I technically doing to play this part? Am I doing it right? Is it sound right? That part of it, when my brain is thinking about that, I have a hard time feeling the emotion to the riff. It's only once that becomes mechanically set in my brain, and then I can hear it from the perspective of a listener, that I really connect with the music. And that's always been a through line since day one. So I go back to my earliest days of playing music with people, and we always had a cassette deck there or a boombox to record it. And some of my favorite recordings are these old things that sound like garbage, but a blown out cassette recording, but you could hear that, hey, this is all coming together. These riffs work with the song, and I get an emotional charge from it. And it's like I said with that Ulver record, where you can listen behind the noise and you can hear something magic there. And that's always stuck with me. And what I like about today is that now I can clear out that noise a lot faster.
Yeah. The production value is much easier to obtain nowadays than it used to be. But I still have a lot of love for that raw sound. Christian, maybe not so much, but I still appreciate the wall of noise a little bit.
Yeah, it's the same. It can be magical, or it can be frustrating, especially if you're looking for something that you can't pull out of that wash.
I mean, far and away, I think the thing that impresses me the most about metal in the modern era is the sheer amount. And for a musical genre that is quote unquote dead, that, died in the early 90s, still a ton of people out there making it. And I would say it's because they love this music. And that's the driving force behind all of it. Because I'm sure you're not writing your Inexorum album thinking, this one here is going to be the one that buys me a new jet. No. So it is, and I think that's why me and Justin try to stay as positive as we do, is because of that. Because this is a labor of love for us as well as the people writing this music. So, it's got to be on both sides.
Yeah, it feels like this and punk are kind of the last places where bands are important to music today. I mean, it's so much has moved away from the concept of a band or even a group. If you look at who's at the top of iTunes charts or Billboard charts, it's always individuals, and I think a lot of that goes to the way the music business is organized now, and that it's harder to market a band. It's easier to market a single personality, and especially with pop music and all of that stuff. It's really you look at some of the stuff that was kind of popular bands of the last couple decades, and they're really there's not a lot of those coming out today. So guitar-based music, it really lives on and is still vital, only in a couple niches, and it's metal and punk and punk maybe to a lesser degree. I mean, I feel like punk was everywhere around 25 years ago. It was on the radio, but now it's really, you don't hear guitars on the radio. You don't hear it at the top of the charts or in the Grammys. It's not much of a thing.
I mean, the closest you get these days is a band like Ghost. They're pretty much the only ones, them and Sleep Token to some degree,
Greta Van Fleet
making those big headlines. But you're absolutely right. Like, most of the bands you see are the same bands you've been seeing for 25 to 30 years. There's not a lot of new ones that are making splashes in the mainstream.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad for bands that start to break out a little bit larger like that. I mean, I feel like you hear about Spirit Box a lot, and I've listened to their new one, and it's not the stuff that I necessarily choose on my own, but I can appreciate it, and I can see how, a band like that can appeal to a new audience, and so I'm happy for them. Like Baby Metal, all right.
Yeah,
I've listened to their stuff, and while it's maybe a little too happy, but I get what they're doing too, and so I'm glad for that stuff, even if it's not what I feel like I pivot to for my own listening. I understand why it's cool that they're there and that they bring in maybe some new people to hearing, hey, guitars are actually cool.
Yeah. I mean, without those kinds of bands, maybe some 15-year-old kid's not going to discover that he likes rock and roll and then go down the rabbit hole and discover he likes metal and then extreme metal. I mean, it's all a progression, so those bands have to exist. And unfortunately, you're right, there are fewer and fewer of them. But they say everything's cyclical, so maybe, 20 years from now, rock will be the predominant music force again. We can always hope.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just glad there's so much cool stuff still happening in, my favorite genre. So it still feels all right to me. I'm content.
Yeah, us too. I will say, like I've said this before, but I do love that you can go to a metal concert for $20, stand 10 feet away from your favorite band, and then go and talk to them at the booth afterwards. You try to go see anybody that's, top 40, and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to go, and you're going to sit in the nosebleeds.
Yeah, it's a different thing. And I think it's more about, there is more community, as corny as it may seem, having done some of these festivals over the last couple of years has been really kind of magical because, you're spending time with the other bands and the promoters and the fans all in the same place. And it's just, we're all just music geeks at heart and fans of this kind of outsider art. And it's just nice to be able to talk about stuff that, you can't just talk with your coworkers about because it's, maybe it's a little too weird, but it is kind of a shared language. And, just like I think people who go to like Comic-Con and fans of, various fandoms. I mean, there's, that community matters. So I don't know. Anyway, I just say it's fun to be doing something like this that has that sense of community, and that factors into how I write too, as I think about, all the cool people I've met over the years because of being in music and some of the stories I've heard people telling me about their own lives and, how the music impacts them. That feeds me a little bit too.
That's great. Yeah, I love the metal community, to be honest. I mean, I'm very involved in social media talking to all different types of metalheads. And, I've been a big comic nerd for a long time in my life. I've been a big fan of, various TV shows and stuff. Of all the fandoms I've ever been a part of, metal is definitely the most, like, accepting and, like, cool community because people are just there to enjoy it and talk about it and geek out about it. There's still an element of, like the NSBM folks and whatnot and the true cultures that are going to just be dicks, but it's such a small element in the larger communities that you can just avoid it pretty easily. So I love it. I love what metal's all about.
Yeah. Yep.
And, you know, for it being the most probably violent music out there, it seems like most of the people that I've ever met were just super cool. You know, when you read some of these lyrics, you could be freaked out. That actually brings up another question. Beyond metal, what art, books, or unexpected influences do you think have shaped your creative perspective? Like any sort of literature that really spoke to you, or visual art, or non-musical experiences?
Yeah, I think with respect to Skjolden, I mean, some of the music that I like, even before I discovered metal, I loved early electronic music. I'm talking about like the prehistoric stuff, like Tomita and Vangelis. That stuff meant a lot to me as a kid, even really before I was into rock. And my first favorite band was Devo. So that kind of was a mix of synthesizers and rock that I just loved. So, that has always been, I've been an electronic music fan since then as well. So having to have an opportunity to kind of sneak some of that stuff into this project was really cool. I wouldn't say that any other literature or media really fed into Skjolden or Inexorum, but absolutely for Antiverse, that is very much rooted in my interests in science fiction and horror, and this kind of the storytelling narrative approach of, kind of in the King Diamond tradition of, being able to tell a little self-contained story in a lyric or a series of songs. I love that. So, Antiverse is definitely literary, it's a lot of science fiction, a lot of horror. Those are probably my two favorite genres of nonfiction that I read. So I'm, I still am a big reader. I love to read nonfiction. That's probably my favorite thing to do outside of music.
Cool. Yeah,
I'm sorry, nonfiction, fiction.
Yeah.
I don't need reality. I need to escape.
Yeah, we got to escape it, right? Yeah, I love horror too. Horror's been a huge impact on me, so I totally get that. Well, so we talked a lot about, all the new releases and everything, but is there any music you've discovered over the last year that has really meant something to you?
Well, you mentioned Judas Priest, and I loved Invincible Shield. I thought that made me feel like I was, 15 again. Some of the stuff I liked from last year, I mean, I'm just looking at my list. There's some things that are long-running bands. I love The Last Necrophobic.
That's really good.
Autumn Fall, I don't know if you've heard that. That's this kind of descendant of Fall of the Leaf, and it's basically the same sound of those first two Fall of the Leaf albums. I loved that album last year. Have you heard The Holy Flesh?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Oh, all right. They're just on Bandcamp, but check out The Holy Flesh. To me, that there's something about that band that really clicks. A lot of bands do the occult thing, and that's their image, but it kind of stops there. Something about this band kind of makes me feel like you're not supposed to be hearing it. They just have a spooky vibe to it that feels amazing.
Advocate, Martyr, and Redeemer, was that the album from last year?
That was the one from last year. And then I would also recommend their debut as well. Those two especially for me are just like, they knocked me flat, and just how this feels like you're hearing this from another room and another plane of existence. So I really like that. Let's see what else. The Counting Hours. I'm a big fan of that sort of sad boy doom stuff, Rapture and the bands that have come out of that scene. Slumber is another one. And Counting Hours is some of the people from Rapture. And it's really amazing. It's got that sort of old Catatonia drive.
Yeah.
It kind of like the Brave Murder Day sound taken, into the modern age with some different elements. And I can't get enough of that. Really like the Dissimulator record too. That was on $20 Spin. I felt like that was a really cool hybrid of like science fiction, thrash, and death metal. I love the intersection of that. That rules. I mean, there's too much good stuff.
Yeah,
we know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the albums that we keep telling everybody that they need to listen to if they haven't is, do you know the band In Vain?
Yes.
That Solemn album is so damn good. That was really close to our album of the year last year. Gary is the only one that beat it out. But yeah, Jesus Christ, the level of talent in that band is just off the damn charts.
Amiensis too.
Oh yeah, Amiensis as well. We kind of group both of those records together, even though they're released 6 months apart. But yeah, as a whole, Jesus Christ, just Yeah. Again, where's this level of fucking talent? You know, it's just crazy how much insane talent is out there.
Yeah,
And in
you should.
Minnesota, for fuck's sake.
You
You
should
know the
check
guys
out.
in Oak Pantheon?
Yep.
Yeah, they're
awesome.
incredible band too. Just everywhere.
Yeah, that. So Joe from Amiensis, that's his project I was mentioning earlier. Is the All VST. It's called X and Air. I might not be saying that right, but I'll shoot you that link too. It is otherworldly. I've never heard anything like it. And I was asking him, how did you get the guitars to bend like that while doing tremolo? And he explained how it was done, and it's just like, my head exploded. So it's kind of got a Bluetooth Nord sound to it, and man, it rules. So I love, there's so many cool records coming out of Minnesota. I mean, Pestifere, who just put out their new album. It's so amazing. Silva, they're local friends of mine that I played their first 2 shows with them. They're a killer band that I think is going nowhere but up. Gosh, there's just so many cool things that are, obviously Panopticon, the big heavyweight in out of Minnesota by way of Kentucky. And I always look forward to what Austin's going to do with Bated Breath because I always love it. So it's fun just to be, part of the Minnesota scene and all these cool things coming out. Mycorrhizae, have you heard Mycorrhizae or Caldecott?
Yep.
Oh, Be Still My Beating Heart. I love Travis's stuff, Travis and Kishel from False. What they're doing right now is just right, that goes right to the sweet spot for me. It rules. So that's just scratching the surface. I mean, I feel really lucky to be surrounded by people who inspire me too.
Yeah.
I think we'll finish with one last question. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self when you started early, what would it be?
Yeah, I would tell myself to mellow out. I know some of my first bands, I heard feedback from people that I played with that I was a little bit too hard driving or expected more out of people than they were able to give. And I've learned how to be a lot better bandmate and friend over the last few years. And I think I would hope that if you ask my current bandmates how it is to be in a band with me, it'd be pretty positive. But when I was younger, I think I felt like, well, we got to do this and we've got to do that. And we need to hit all these, goals and objectives. And it might not have been as fun to be around as I could have been. So if I could go back, I would definitely tell my younger self to, hey, just take it easy on your bandmates and, let them be human beings and not just, avenues towards achieving certain musical outcomes. Because that's not really what it is. When you're in a band with other people, you've got to be able to compromise and you have to make room for everyone else. And I learned that a little too late, but I did eventually learn it.
Well,
I think that comes with age.
Yeah. I mean, I think people don't really know how to navigate any sort of relationships when you're young. You improve at that as you get older, but there's also got to be somebody that's the driving force behind, moving forward too. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too much for it because some of that has to be there. Yeah,
it's true. Yeah, there's got to be a balance, and nothing. Nothing gets done if there isn't somebody who's saying, "All right, let's do this." But it's how you approach it, and I'm better at it now than I was.
Yeah, I've been podcasting for 15 years, and I've had 4 different co-hosts, and navigating that has been challenging too. But working with Christian has been the best experience ever because he's, just as in this as I am. He throws ideas out, he contributes, and having collaborators that are also passionate about whatever you're working on just makes a huge difference. So I get it.
That's awesome. Yeah, metal isn't just about being in the bands. There's also the people who are the journalists and the podcasters and writing and sharing the music that matters. It is so cool. And none of us are walking away with just big stacks of cash for this. It's just like, we do it because we love it.
Yeah.
And that's just so cool. I'm always amazed and grateful that there's this whole connected community that's just so into this, and everyone's a participant. It's not just passive entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Carl. This has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and getting to know more about Inexorum and Skjolden. I keep having to look so I don't mispronounce it.
You got it.
But we're going to close out the show by playing your latest single, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So it's called Insoucient Metaphysical Grandeur, and it was just released. You said the album's going to be coming out June 21st?
20th.
June 20th.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it'll be on all the digital platforms and Bandcamp. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it. And thank you too. And we will see you guys next time.
All right. Thanks so much.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.